3 bone-chilling night shift horror stories that haunt you forever. The clock struck midnight, and with it came the echoes of the unknown. In the heart of a dilapidated hospital, shadows danced eerily across the walls, whispering secrets known only to the dead. It was on this bone-chilling night that Chloe, a junior nurse, faced the unthinkable. Alone on her shift, she felt the weight of 1,000 eyes watching her, an unsettling presence lurking just beyond the periphery of her vision. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously, casting a sickly glow over the empty halls, making her skin crawl. The first glimpse of strangeness came when she heard a low humming sound, droning softly through the silence. It wasn't the familiar hum of machines, no, this was something else entirely. It was almost melodic, like a lullaby echoing from a long-abandoned nursery. Goosebumps prickled her arms as she followed the sound, each step feeling heavier than the last. At the end of the dim corridor stood room 213, known for its history of inexplicable occurrences. They warned her not to peek inside, but curiosity clawed at her like a wild animal. Suddenly, the humming stopped. An oppressive stillness filled the air. It felt like the moment just before a storm, tension coiled tightly in her chest. Chloe's eyes darted to the door, and in that heartbeat, she swore she saw a figure behind the glass, an outline so faint, it could easily be mistaken for a trick of the light. But her heart was pounding as she took a step closer, mouth dry, breath held tight. What could be lurking in that room, just waiting for the courage of a fool to set it free? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Chloe's breath quickened, and suddenly she felt the chill of someone's breath on the back of her neck. She spun around, eyes wide with terror. Empty. The hallway stretched out before her, hauntingly silent, like a dark abyss waiting to claim her. Her pounding heart echoed in her ears, drowning out every sound. She shook her head, trying to dispel the dread that clung to her like fog. Just then, a door creaked ominously down the hall, opening slightly as if beckoning her to join whatever horror lay within. Would she take that step, or would the night consume her whole? The chill deepened as she edged closer, on the brink of discovering the truth behind the shadows that haunted her shift. What roamed the halls of that forsaken hospital? What secrets waited to entangle her in their web? Only one thing was certain, the true horror was just beginning. Chloe hesitated, the weight of indecision crashing down on her like a wave. The air in the corridor felt thick, a heavy blanket of dread that clung to her skin. Her instincts screamed at her to turn back, to run. But something deeper, darker, coaxed her closer to room 213. With shaky hands, she reached for the doorknob. A metallic chill shot through her as she gripped it, turning slowly. The door creaked open, revealing an unsettling darkness. It was as if the shadows pooled within the room, eager to swallow her whole. What am I doing? She thought, every sense screaming for her to retreat. Yet, she didn't move. The hum began again, louder now, enveloping her in a haunting melody that felt both ancient and intimate. It drew her in like a moth to a flame, beckoning her to step further into the room. Chloe's heart raced as she crossed the threshold, the cool air inside sending shivers racing down her spine. Inside, the room looked untouched by time yet trapped in a strange stillness. Old medical equipment stood like tombstones, covered in a fine layer of dust. The window was boarded up, blocking any sign of the outside world, a cocoon of despair. Yet, something else held her attention. At the far end of the room, an old rocking chair began to move ever so slightly on its own, creaking rhythmically in tune with the hum that filled the air. Chloe felt a lump form in her throat. She knew she should turn around, but the inexplicable pull anchored her in place. Just a glimpse, she thought, her breath quickening as she took a cautious step forward. As she approached the chair, she squinted into the darkness, searching for the source of the disturbing lullaby. "Stop it!" she suddenly shouted into the void, her voice trembling and echoing off the walls. Silence fell sharply, slicing through the tension like a knife. The chair stilled. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of Chloe's rapid breathing, then, a whisper flowed from the darkness, so soft yet chilling, "Chloe." Her name hung in the air, wrapping around her like icy fingers. She shot back, heart racing wildly, skin prickling with fear. "Who is there?" she demanded, her voice more shaky than defiant. The shadows shifted, coiling tighter. She felt the presence now, a suffocating weight pressing down on her chest. "You shouldn't have come here." Another hushed voice slithered through the air. It wasn't just one voice, it was the voices of countless lost souls merging, blending into one. Chloe's mind reeled as panic seized her. She turned on her heel, stumbling out of the room, but not before she caught a fleeting glimpse of something in the corner of her eye, a flash of a pale face, eyes hollow and dark. The moment felt like hours, the darkness around her pressing closer as she sprinted down the hall, the hum now a deafening roar behind her. She could feel it, the cold breath of the shadows chasing her, a relentless predator seeking to lay claim to its next victim. Finally bursting through the exit, she leaned against the wall, gasping for oxygen, the beat of her heart a wild drum in her ears. But as her breath steadied, a sickening realization washed over her. Somewhere in that room, in the depths of its cursed history, lay a truth she could never unlearn. What awaited her back inside? What truths had she awoken beneath the layers of time? Chloe knew this wasn't over. Not yet. She had entered the dark, but the shadows had just begun to reveal their secrets. And something even darker was coming for her now. Chloe steadied herself, her back pressed against the grimy wall as the wild pulse of her heartbeat began to slow. But the warmth of daylight felt like a distant memory. It was as if the sun had been muffled by an unseen hand. Shadows skittered at the edges of her vision, teasing her, daring her to go back inside. "Get it together," she whispered fiercely, trying to snap her mind back into focus. But the room loomed behind her like a gate to another realm. What secrets lay within its silent walls? Could she really leave without understanding what had happened? Taking a deep breath, she pivoted and glanced down the corridor. The ominous silence felt heavy as she took a tentative step toward the door again. Every fiber of her being screamed against it, yet the pull was magnetic. Pushing through, she stepped inside room 213 once more, the air instantly chilled, enveloping her like a pallid fog. The hum seemed to rise from the walls, vibrating beneath her feet. She scanned for the rocking chair, but it was motionless now, the darkness swallowing its silhouette. "Why am I doing this?" she thought, fear mingling with a curious thrill. It twisted like a knife in her stomach, but she pressed on, feeling her pulse thundering in her ears. "Chloe," the whisper broke the eerie silence, sharper this time, as if it were waiting for her, inviting her deeper into its grasp. "Show yourself," she yelled, her voice thick with defiance. It echoed back at her, mocking. A moment stretched into eternity, and just as she thought to bolt for safety, a flash of movement caught her eye. The rocking chair creaked, almost defiantly, producing a low groan that made her skin crawl. Chloe stepped closer, her heart in her throat. Ghostly figures flitted past the windowless walls, a glimpse of something pale, desperate eyes merging into the suffocating darkness. Suddenly, the air thickened as if it were alive, swirling with electric energy. Shadows began to coalesce, forming a tangled mass that writhed and twisted before her. "Why did you come back?" It wasn't a whisper anymore, it clawed at the edges of her sanity, filling the room with raw power. I needed to know." she stammered, stepping back, but the door slammed shut behind her, trapping her within this nightmare. She banged on the wood, panic flooding her veins. "Chloe, you're one of us now," the chorus of voices echoed, each word seeping into her, wrapping around her mind like a vice. The air chilled further, and she could almost feel the weight of unfathomable sorrow pressing down on her. "No, no, I refuse," she shouted, drawing upon what little courage remained, but as she stood her ground, the shadows surged forward, blurring her vision with their inky tendrils. They wrapped around her ankles, dragging her toward the center of the room. Whatever was lurking there felt alive, pulsating with an energy that throbbed in time with her heartbeat. "Let go of me." She felt small, desperate. The coldness engulfed her, pulling apart her thoughts, laying bare her deepest fears. The faces of the lost souls swirled around her, eyes glazed with anguish and despair, each a testament to a past she couldn't comprehend. Then, as the darkness pressed in like a collapsing star, a flicker of light sparked from the depths of the room, a sliver of hope or a final betrayal. Chloe reached for it, her fingers brushing past the chill of despair. She was to discover a fragment of truth, but would it save her or seal her fate? And then, just as she grasped the light, the shadows howled, a cacophony of despair that shook the very foundations of her sanity. A scream echoed outside, snapping her back to the moment as the door rattled behind her. "Help me! It's in here!" She cried, the truth racing to her lips, but was it only the beginning of something far worse? What had she truly awakened? What consequence had she invited with her presence? The air crackled with a deafening uncertainty as she stood in the grip of darkness. The choice loomed before her, but the answer she sought danced in the shadows, elusive and dangerous. Would she reach for the light or succumb to the creeping fear that threatened to consume her? Chloe's hands trembled as the darkness writhed around her, a pulse of terror tightening in her chest. She pulled at the shadows, trying to break free, but they clung to her like an unwanted embrace. The swirling void was inhospitable, an endless abyss that stole her breath. "Help!" She screamed, her voice cracking, each syllable swallowed by the hungry darkness, the flicker of light. It pulsed with potential, a last sanctuary. She was not ready to be consumed. Gritting her teeth, she forced her legs to move, to step toward the glow that shimmered with the promise of truth. "Chloe, come back!" The voices shifted, now laced with desperation, akin to a siren's song begging her to remain. Moments stretched into chaos, tears of fear welling in her eyes as she took another step closer. Then, the lights flickered, a beacon fading in and out, almost mocking her. She felt a sudden rush, a rush that cascaded through her, sending chills down her spine. The shadows wrapped tighter, threatening to unfold whatever nightmare lurked beyond. "Give in!" They howled, an explosion of sound that pulsed through her bones. The weight grew unbearable, her heart thudding as it fought for survival against the despair. As she grasped the light, it flared, burning like 1,000 suns, illuminating the room in a ghostly glow. Memories flashed before her, joy, hope, and the laughter of loved ones. A face emerged, familiar but blurred, a reminder of who she was before stepping into this cursed place. "Help me!" She cried again, desperation boiling over as the shadows recoiled momentarily, revealing a pocket of breathing room, but the light dimmed as quickly as it appeared, the darkness roaring back, angry and ravenous. The faces emerged again, swirling closer. They were not there to comfort her, they were looking for a vessel, for someone to carry their sorrow. "What do you want?" Chloe shouted into the void, her voice trembling with defiance. Each face responded silently, a tapestry of grief and unrelenting despair reaching for her soul. Then, with a terrifying clarity, she recalled the stories told about this room. Each soul trapped, searching for closure. Trapped in a loop of sadness from which they could neither escape nor find peace. And now, she was part of it, an unwitting participant in a grim tale woven from shadows. "Chloe," the voices called, now tinged with an eerie calm. "Join us." "No!" She screamed, her voice echoing above the rising swell of despair. They tried to pull her in, but she fought back with all her might, evoking the memory of loved ones, the will to survive. "I am not like you," she bellowed, and as if her words were a dagger piercing the veil, the shadows paused, conflicted. The moment hung heavy in the air, a fragile stalemate coursing between darkness and her fleeting flame of hope. But just as the tides turned, the scream outside grew louder, desperate and pleading, "Chloe! Don't let it take you." It was a reminder of the world beyond this haunted space, of choices that mattered. But was there time for her to escape? Could she reach for the door before the void consumed her? Just then, a searing pain shot through her chest, the shadows lunging forward with renewed fury. The pulse quickened, a frenzied rhythm that echoed through the room. Chloe's breath quickened, caught between the darkness that beckoned and the incandescent hope flickering in her grasp. Then she realized it wasn't just her fight anymore. The room had become a battleground, where the living and the lost collided. She had a choice to make, but as the light flickered one last time, she felt the weightlessness of surrender tugging at her limbs. What happened next felt pivotal, the dread of inescapable fate looming overhead like a storm cloud, waiting to unleash its fury. Would she crumble under the weight of despair, or could she wield the truth, even from the depths of her own darkness? It wasn't just her own destiny that hung in the balance. A decision needed to be made. And in that fractious silence, the battle for her soul truly commenced. Was it her own salvation she sought, or could she save others who lingered in the shadows with her? As the demons surged once more, she braced for impact, the question echoing louder than any scream: would she step into the light? The shadows lunged at her, a swirling mass of despair that threatened to overwhelm her spirit. In that chaos, Chloe's heart raced, pounding furiously against her ribcage. A cacophony of whispers clawed at her mind, each one promising comfort, yet steeped in agony. "Join us, find peace," they coaxed, their voices a haunting melody weaving through the darkness. Her breath came in shaky gasps as she tightened her hold on the flickering light. It was fragile, like a candle in a storm, but it was hers. She could feel the warmth, a stark contrast to the icy fingers grasping for her skin. "No!" she screamed, driving her voice into the heart of darkness. "I will not be like you. I will not give in." With furious determination, she took a step back, pulling the light closer to her chest. It pulsed with energy, illuminating the sorrowful faces that surrounded her, a portrait of suffering that transcended time. Each gaze was heavy with stories left untold, pain frozen in their expressions, begging for release. Suddenly, a sound pierced through the din, a loud crash that resonated in the stillness. Was that the door? Hope flickered weakly in her chest. "Chloe." The voice from outside was clearer now, desperate, filled with urgency. The warmth of connection knotted in her stomach, urging her to fight, but the shadows were stronger. They twisted and roared, and the flicker of light dimmed as if struggling against an unseen force. The faces around her contorted with anger, and one in particular broke through, a figure she barely recognized. It was her father, his eyes hollow yet pleading, mouth moving silently in a loop of despair. "Daddy!" she gasped, recognizing the remnants of a love that once gave her strength. "Help me!" The shadows recoiled slightly, sensing her moment of clarity. She was fighting not just for herself but for everyone in this room. The realization bolted through her, sending waves of defiance through her veins. She wasn't merely trapped, she was their chance for salvation. Together, she screamed, turning her voice back towards the multitude of faces. "If you want to escape, we must push back. You are more than your sadness." As if her words ignited a spark within them, the faces shifted, their expressions evolving from despair to determination. They reached towards her, not to drag her down, but to lift her up. Chloe felt the energy radiate, pulling at the shadows with a new ferocity. The air grew electric as the light intensified, bathing the room in a brilliant hue. The darkness shrieked in fury, a celestial scream that rattled the walls. Chloe felt alive, the connection with the lost pulling her into a whirlwind of memories, their joys mingling with their pain. "Fight!" she shouted into the tempest, her heart pounding with every syllable. "Remember who you were. Remember us." In that blinding instant, she saw them, echoes of joy, laughter, warm moments shared. Each memory like a shard of light piercing through the gloom. The figures around her seemed to glow as the shadows trembled, their resolve faltering. With every ounce of strength, Chloe pressed toward the fading door, pulling the others along with her. But the darkness was not finished yet. The shadows surged back, a tidal wave of anger and grief, threatening to swallow them all. It was a battle, a dance between light and dark, and Chloe could feel the weight of it pressing down, the frantic push and pull almost suffocating. Then she heard it again, the voice from outside, now more impatient, more fervent. "Chloe! Don't let them take you." With that, her focus sharpened. She could not let this be the end. Not just for herself but for those clinging on to her light, battling their own demons. She took the last step into the light. The room exploded with energy, the walls cracking as the door shuddered under the force of so many souls fighting to break free. As she broke through, a gust of wind tore through the space, and for a brief moment, Chloe felt weightless. But then, a flash of darkness gripped her ankle, pulling her back. She gasped, panic surging. The fight was far from over. The shadows were not done with her yet. Would she find the strength to resist the tendrils of despair, or would she plummet back into the abyss? The battle had just begun. Chloe felt it, the icy grip of despair clutching her, tightening around her ankle like a predator's jaws. The flickering light pulsed wildly, struggling against the drag of shadows that threatened to swallow her whole. Just as she started to tug free, the whispers rose crescendoing into a chaotic howl. "You think you can escape?" They taunted, a chilling reminder that darkness never releases its hold willingly. With every ounce of her strength, Chloe yanked her leg, feeling the tug of malevolence deeper with each passing second. "Fight back!" she screamed, urging those around her to keep pushing toward the light. Their eyes, filled with echoes of heartache, mirrored her resilience. They were with her. They needed them as much as she needed them. The flickering light flared bright, illuminating the anguish-stretched faces. She could sense the threads of despair woven through their beings, but it had begun to fray. The warmth pulsing from her light connected them all, uniting their individual struggles into a powerful force against the looming darkness. Each shout, each frantic movement was a declaration of defiance. For a moment, it felt as if they could overpower the shadows. She could see it in their eyes, determination rising from the ashes of sadness. They were rediscovering fragments of hope, shadows threatening to wane, but as Chloe pushed deeper into the connection, the shadows retaliated with a fresh surge of rage. "Chloe!" A new voice broke through the din. It was her mother, her presence radiant amid the gloom. "You can't let them take you. Remember who you are." The shadows surrounding her shivered at the sound. Her heart swelled as tears blurred her vision. Memories of family dinners and laughter flooded her senses, and she felt her resolve strengthen. "Mom! I won't give up." She called out, each word forcing the chilling grasp to weaken. With every inch she gained, the whispers cracked, like ice yielding to winter's end. Suddenly, the door, a jagged outline in the distance, began to widen, light flooding into the room like a breaking dawn. But even as it beckoned them closer, the shadows gathered, swirling into a tempest, an angry storm that roared like a beast in its death throes. "You belong to us!" they screamed, their voices merging into a monstrous roar that shook the very foundations of the room. Chloe's pulse quickened. The last ounce of her willpower surged through her, linking with every soul around her. "We are not alone," she declared, her voice slicing through the chaos. Their hands reached towards the doorway, grasping at flickers of light as shadows clawed in desperation. They formed a chain, a human anchor against the darkness that tried to claw them back. The wind howled, and as the walls of the room trembled, Chloe bit down on her fear. They were so close. The door loomed larger, glowing with promises of freedom, but the shadows roared louder in response. With a collective breath, they lunged forward, a sea of light defying the mayhem. The moment felt timeless, suspended in a battle of wills. Chloe could feel the corners of the abyss tugging at her, could sense it trying to claim what would soon be lost. Her throat tightened, chest heaving, but she forced out a cry so loud it shook the air. And then, she felt that the darkness started to pull back, but just when she thought they might escape, a deep rumble erupted from the ground beneath them, splitting the floor wide open. An eerie light from below shone through the fissure, illuminating the depths of a chasm that stretched into oblivion. "What is happening?" Fear crept into her voice, heart hammering. The realization struck her, the shadows were not just bitter specters, they were deeply rooted, the pain encapsulated within the very space they were fighting for. Before she could react, an immense force grasped her again, this time rising from the fissure, tendrils of shadows swirling around her body like serpents. Chloe screamed, her voice a desperate plea, "No. I want to go back." As she struggled against the darkness pulling her down, the faces of those around her began to fade, a mirror of her own vulnerability. Just as she felt the weight of despair reasserting itself, she spotted a flash of hope. The door trembled again, and her father's figure surged back, solid as ever. "Chloe. You have to choose. Fight the darkness or be consumed by it." The shadows writhed, a battle raging as the weight of the world pressed down. Would the pull of her father's love be strong enough to anchor her? Would she dare leap into the unknown? The choice lay before her, veiled in darkness and light, and time felt like it stood still. As that moment stretched, a shocking realization hit her: would she become the light or walk into the darkness? The answer hung like a heavy breath as she stood on the precipice of choice, fighting for her essence and the very souls of those she loved. Chloe's heart hammered in her chest, each beat a war cry against the encroaching shadows. The world around her bent and twisted, reality flickering like a dying bulb. She felt the pull of darkness, cold and unyielding, dragging at her sanity. The chasm yawning beneath her whispered threats, calling her name, "Chloe, come back." Familiar voices faded, lost in a chaotic sea of fear. Her father's words lingered like a lifeline, "Fight the darkness." But how? Doubt clawed deep in her mind, scratching at the edges of her resolve. What if she wasn't strong enough? What if the shadows were right? The swirling tendrils hissed cruelly, sliding up her legs, and she could almost feel the thump of her heartbeat in sync with the rumbling panic beneath. "I want to go back." She screamed again, fighting against despair with the weight of her love for those who needed her. The memories of laughter and warmth surged forward, cascading like waves, filling her with an almost electric energy. "Chloe." The voice was clearer now, cutting through the chaos like a lightning bolt. Her mother's unwavering faith. "You are the light. Use it." Chloe inhaled sharply, awakening every flicker of hope she had ever felt. She couldn't falter now, not when the essence of her family grounded her. Clenching her fists, she drew upon that warmth, channeling it as she faced the shadows coiling around her. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice echoing and resonating within the throbbing darkness. Her heart ignited. She felt the connection to her loved ones, their hope and courage weaving through her very being, becoming part of her shield against despair. It was time to take back control. She took a step forward, then another, the ground trembling beneath her feet. Each movement felt like 1,000 pounds lifted. The shadows shrieked, visibly recoiling from her blossoming light, shimmering like a star igniting in a pitch-black sky. "I choose hope." With that declaration, Chloe surged forward, breaking through the shackles holding her in place. The chains of darkness erupted, sending a shockwave reverberating through the room. Blinding brilliance burst from her, pushing back the shadows that screamed and writhed, disintegrating as they collided with her light. But just as victory felt within reach, the shadows regrouped, more furious than ever. They thronged around her, thickening like the very air had come alive, threatening to suffocate her. Whispers turned into screams of rage. "You cannot defy us. You are ours." The glowing doorway pulsed with life, tantalizingly close yet seemingly out of reach as the darkness retaliated. Chloe glanced back at the fractured faces of those around her, each face radiant with a flicker of shared hope. She was not alone. She would never be alone again. Together. She roared, a rallying cry that ignited their spirits. The others around her responded, hands touching, voices raised in solidarity. The light grew stronger, an unyielding beacon, illuminating the shadows as they fought harder against their onslaught, chipping away at the fortress of gloom with every heartbeat. But then, the ground trembled once more as malevolent laughter erupted from the pit, a deep, guttural sound wrapped in despair, do you really think you're free? The shadows will rise again. Chloe's breath caught in her throat. The notion clawed at her mind. Was every ounce of effort futile? Was this only the beginning of something darker yet to come? No. The word surged from her, the weight of it heavier than the darkness itself. She gripped onto her hope, her family, as the walls around her shook. But as they pushed toward the door, something unexpected occurred. Figures began materializing in the shadows, dark reflections of themselves with hollow eyes and twisted smiles. These weren't just shadows. They were the very fears and regrets Chloe had kept buried deep within. The door flickered, the light waning ever so slightly as those echoes of herself loomed closer, yearning to drag her back into the darkness. It was now or never. Would she embrace these reflections and use them to strengthen her resolve? Or would she let them pull her back into the depths of despair? As the luminous aura flickered, Chloe's eyes flared wide in realization. The answer was in the acceptance of her own darkness, but was she brave enough to confront it head-on? The choice between light and shadow once more stood before her, and the clock was ticking. Chloe felt the weight of her own darkness looming before her, an unwelcome presence whispering all her insecurities. Each shadow took shape, twisting and contorting into fears she'd long buried. They wore her face, those dark doppelgangers, eyes glinting with malice. "Chloe, you can't escape us," one hissed, its voice a cold echo of her own. She shuddered, a chill sweeping down her spine. Her breaths came shallow and fast, anxiety tightening like a vice around her chest. She could feel the flicker of her light dimming, the moment of truth only moments away. "No, I won't give in," she whispered fiercely, summoning the resolve that sparked within her. "Then face us." The shadows taunted, lunging forward, their inky tendrils reaching out to drag her under. But Chloe remembered the warmth of her family, the laughter, the glimmers of hope. "I choose to fight," she cried, her voice gaining strength. In that instant, she felt a surge of energy. Shimmering light erupted from her, spilling forth like a radiant wave and enveloping the shadows in its blaze. They recoiled, screeching against the burst of brightness, their forms beginning to dissipate. But as quickly as they fell back, they regrouped, their fury intensifying. "Foolish girl. You think you can banish us? We are part of you." They roared, their chorus overwhelming, drowning her in a tide of despair. Chloe staggered, the realization of her own darkness tearing at her courage. Memories flooded her mind, her first failure, moments of jealousy, guilt, doubts that never seemed to fade. They clawed at her, reminding her of every mistake and every feeling of inadequacy. "You're not strong enough. You never were. Stop it," she screamed, clenching her fists, battling against the tempest raging in her soul. "I am strong. I will not be defined by my mistakes." With every ounce of willpower she had, Chloe focused her energy, her heart radiating with the love of her family. The light around her pulsed, brightening to an almost blinding intensity, illuminating shadows who shrank from its brilliance. Each step forward felt monumental, shaking the very foundation of the darkness. "There." She pointed, the glowing door gleaming with hope. But as her fingers stretched toward it, the shadows surged, a final desperate attempt to pull her under. "Embrace us. We are your truth," they chanted, their voices turning to a howling gale that seemed to rip at her skin. Chloe hesitated, the sounds swirling in her mind, clawing at her sanity. But it was then that she saw them clearly. Each fear, each regret was not just a threat, but part of her. The shadows were carved from her own experiences, not the final word on her worth. The voices twisted into her and beat like a drum, but she remembered the moments that had brought her joy, the faces of those who loved her unconditionally. "Better to shine with your faults than to fade in fear," Chloe shouted, accepting the dark pieces of herself. Her love for her family became a bulwark against despair, merging with her light, reinforcing her courage like thick steel. The shadows bellowed, furious at her newfound resolve, but they began to lose form. She felt a new energy coursing through her, a deeper flame igniting inside. "I am whole. I am worthy." The ground beneath her trembled violently, shaking with the clash of light and dark. The shadows screamed, disintegrating before her eyes, and with a final burst, she surged toward the door, her heart racing. But as she reached for the knob, it slipped from her grasp, flickering with doubt. "No. You cannot leave." A chilling voice echoed. The air thickened, heavy with malevolence, as an unearthly hand grasped at her ankle, pulling her back. Chloe's pulse quickened, fear clawing at her throat. Desperation clawed at her mind. Would she be consumed, lost amidst the echoes of her past? Or could she shatter the chains that held her back and step into the light she fought so hard for? Pulling her strength from the depths of her soul, she prepared for a final confrontation, her breath hitching in anticipation. The shadows were not done with her. Yet, what would happen when she faced her most painful reflection? Would embracing it set her truly free, or would it bury her deeper in darkness? The weight of the darkness surged as Chloe felt the shadows coil tighter around her. The hand gripping her ankle pulsed with icy energy, dragging her down into chaos. Panic threatened to engulf her, she gasped for air, each breath a battle against despair's vice-like grip. It would be so easy to let them pull her under, to surrender to the darkness that promised release from the pain of existence. "No!" she roared, the word ripping from her throat. The more she fought, the stronger her light became, pushing back against the shadows that clung to her like a broken promise. With a swift, desperate motion, she tore at the grasping tendrils, her heart pounding as adrenaline coursed through her veins. "Why waste your energy?" The voices hissed, weaving a web of doubt. "You belong to us. You always have." Chloe refused to be defined by those words. The memories surged again, vivid and unrelenting. Each failure, the time she lost her mother's birthday gift or didn't perform well in school, came crashing back. But she grounded herself in the warmth of the love she had felt, the laughter shared around the dinner table, the hugs that enveloped her like a safety net. Her resolve solidified like a shield as she shouted, "You are not me. You do not own me." She felt the energy at her core ignite, flames licking at her heart. Light radiated from her, illuminating the churning darkness with a ferocity that shook the very air. The shadows writhed in agony, their forms flickering and dissolving like smoke caught in a fierce wind. Chloe took a step toward the door, the light around her growing sharper, more defined. The air buzzed with resonance, a promise of hope. But just as she reached for the knob again, it shifted, faceless and cold, as if it had a mind of its own. "Is that all you have? You think this light can save you?" The malevolent voice boomed, reverberating off the walls of her mind. The shadows amassed again, folding into a thick knot, and with one piercing shriek, they lunged at her all at once, a storm of black fury that threatened to swallow her whole. Chloe felt dizzy, teetering on the edge of despair. "Is this it?" she thought, but then a glimmer of something bright broke through the memories of the love she fought to hold on to. It wrapped around her like a cocoon, filling her with warmth and strength. "Keep fighting." She heard her mother's voice echoing within her. "You're stronger than you think." "Yes. I am." She screamed, an eruption of energy spilling from her. In one fluid motion, she pulled her light around her, forming a brilliant spear that pierced the shadows, sending them howling back. They retreated, a mist of tremors and rage. But just as she felt the surge of triumph, a chilling clarity dawned on her. The shadows were not entirely gone. They lingered, deeper than before, whispering insidious doubts that twisted in her mind. "Do you truly believe you have conquered us?" they taunted, their voices slithering like poison into her consciousness. "We can never be fully cast aside. We are your truth." Chloe felt the world around her shift. The light flickered, casting strange shapes upon the walls. Fear crept in, knotting her stomach. How could she move forward if this darkness wouldn't release its grasp? "What do I need to do?" she screamed, her voice cracking under the weight of her plea. But the shadows answered with deafening silence, their laughter ringing in her ears, drumming a steady rhythm of dread. Then she saw it, a flicker of truth buried deep in her heart, a golden thread of clarity amidst the chaos. Embrace your power. As a surge of wisdom washed over her, Chloe suddenly understood, she didn't have to eradicate the darkness completely. To step into her light, she needed to integrate the shadow, to use its energy as a source of strength, not fear. And yet how would she do that when the shadows vowed to consume her? The door still loomed, just an arm's reach away. Would this revelation light the path ahead, or would her attempt to integrate leave her vulnerable to the very fears she aimed to conquer? As the shadows swirled, ready to strike again, she braced herself for what lay beyond that threshold. What awaited her on the other side of acceptance? Would it be liberation or just another layer of darkness ready to unfold? Chloe's heart raced as she struggled to integrate the shadows within her. The cold tendrils of despair wrapped tighter around her, taunting her fears and regrets. But beneath the chaos, she felt something shift, a flicker of understanding igniting within her. She didn't have to fight against every shadow, she could accept them as part of her journey, a testament to her resilience. I will embrace you, she shouted into the inky void. You are part of me, but you do not define me. The shadows shrieked, swirling violently as though resisting her realization. They hissed, louder and more threatening, but Chloe stood her ground. The warmth of her light pulsed steadily, and with every heartbeat, her confidence grew. She remembered the laughter of her friends, the warmth of her family's love, and the little victories she had fought for. Those memories radiated strength, banishing the suffocating gray that threatened to swallow her whole. The door shimmered ahead, beckoning her with the golden glow of hope. It symbolized everything she feared losing but also everything she sought to reclaim. I choose to walk through that door, she declared, her voice steady and resonating with conviction. She gathered her energy. In that moment of clarity, she refused to be dragged into the depths of her past. The shadows recoiled as she pulled the remnants of those painful memories into her heart, weaving them into the tapestry of her being. Their hold began to loosen as she stepped forward, anchoring her resolve in the love and light hidden within her. The shadows writhed, dark thunder roiling above her as they screamed in a cacophony of despair. But Chloe pushed through the turbulence, determination surging like fire through her veins. As she reached out, the door swung open, and a bright, blinding light enveloped her. Chloe stumbled forward, her feet on solid ground once more. The bitter gloom faded behind her, and the whispers of the shadows receded. Her breath came easier, like waking from a nightmare into the soft embrace of dawn. The echoes of lost souls lingered, muted yet present, now like a gentle reminder instead of a haunting curse. Exhaling, she glanced back one last time. The figures in the shadows still flickered in the distance, their faces now softened with understanding instead of anger. You are part of me, she whispered, her heart swelling. And I will carry you with me, not in darkness but in love. For the first time, Chloe felt a sense of peace wash over her. It wasn't so much about escaping as it was about acceptance. Though shadows might linger at the edges of her life, she would choose light and hope over despair. She had faced down her fears and emerged stronger, a warrior against darkness. As she emerged into the cool night air outside the hospital, a soft breeze played against her skin. The stars sparkled above like 1,000 affirmations of hope. Chloe breathed deeply, the freedom so sweet, filling her lungs with the promise of new beginnings. She glanced back at the building, a mixture of gratitude and closure in her heart. Goodbye, room 213, she whispered, letting the door swing shut behind her. You will not have me. With her family and friends, she would find strength in their love, each memory a part of her journey. They would share laughter, adventures, and a life filled with endless possibilities. The darkness, she realized, was just a chapter of her story, not the ending. Chloe stepped forward, toward a brighter dawn. Now that you've journeyed with Chloe through this haunted tale, it's time to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support, it really helps. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Chloe's wild journey. What did you think of her transformation? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let us connect and keep the stories alive.